Today's topic is going to be a prescription for outrageous health, focusing on respiratory issues. Primarily, we're going to talk about colds and flu, but asthma. You'll see all kinds of respiratory issues that we're going to be talking about today. For those of you that are new, for the first time, we do have some free flyers for you. Make sure you get copies of them. There's a health quotient that you should get a copy of. You should get a copy of the, which is just like an HQ, get a copy of the popular myths, health myths and misconceptions. And today we have a special handout on good health naturally. This should be very helpful. As you know, this is the 6th presentation today. We covered a lot of information. But what I tried to do on 2 pages is kind of have a summary of some dietary guidelines, what you should add to your diet, some things that you should be avoiding, some tips on salad dressings and spices, and in addition to avoiding the dairy products, the sugar products that we've been talking about, also talked about some other important things to eliminate from the diet, but more importantly, what should you have in the diet, and some recipes and some lifestyle guidelines. And I also put something in here on food combining principles. Now, that's one of the topics that we're not going to be able to cover during this period. We'll touch on it, some of the aspects of it, and of course, if you have any questions, we're going to talk about that. But that's a really important topic. And the good news is, it is in the book. I cover at least 7 to 10 pages. It is a very important topic, this food combining. Very, very many people are making a lot of mistakes in this area. And what I'm going to try to do is, if I can figure out a way to squeeze it in, to talk about some of these principles. But look at the guidelines today. If you have any questions on that, bring it up, and we'll handle that during the question and answer session. Most of the other topics in the books that I have here, we are covering. But for those of you that aren't here, there's a couple of opportunities you have. We have a number of free articles on the website, which I'll show again later, for the website for our school, which is www.iiomonline.com. The good news is, I've been able to keep up with most of the questions. You guys have asked some very good questions. Some of you have emailed me some questions. And I'm going to, as I promised you, every question that you send to me, whether you write it on a piece of paper and leave it in the back, or you email it to me, I'm going to get to every one of those questions, either while I'm here, or even if I have to do that when I get back. So every question I have been able to answer so far, and you guys have been asking some really good questions. We have a couple of books for sale that basically helps to apply a lot of the principles that we're talking about. And let's see where we are now in the agenda. As you remember, the first presentation was what? Let food be your medicine. And then we talked about the hierarchy of nutrients, which is really important. It's covered in the book. It's covered on the website, free. But it's very important because that's the foundational principle that all of these health issues are based on. And then we talked about how you take the brain and apply it to diet and lifestyle principles and why it was important. We talked about Cancer Sunday, if you remember. We also talked about children's issues. Yesterday we talked about vascular issues, all about blood pressure and diabetes, strokes. And today we're going to talk about prescription for good health, how to add 15 to 30 productive years to your life, focusing in on respiratory issues. Now, you don't want to miss tomorrow's presentation if you have to leave early. It's a really important one because that's where we're going to talk about comparing alternative medicine or naturopathic medicine to conventional medicine. You're really going to love this, the strengths and weaknesses of both. And we're going to talk about, even though there's hundreds of diseases, even thousands of conditions, there's really only 7 fundamental factors that are involved. And as I started out saying, information is power. What I want to do is equip you and empower you with information so you can make the best options, make the best choices of the options available. But more importantly, I want to equip you and empower you to manage your own health. We're big people. We can find our way to church together by ourselves. We can, find our way to work. We can't find our way through the most fundamental health issues. And so that's what the purpose of this is, to equip you with these fundamental issues, these fundamental principles that underlie all of these health issues, so that you can be familiar with the most powerful system known to man for preventing and reversing all chronic degenerative diseases. Friday is a good meeting too. We're going to talk about the 10 Commandments of Health. You know the 10 Commandments of the Moral Law, don't you? Okay, we're going to use that as the model, and then we're going to have a lot of fun with this. Talk about the 10 Commandments of Health, and then we're going to talk about 21st century evangelism. And then you don't want to miss the last presentation on Saturday, where we put all of this together, where we're going to talk about how do you now make the transition from all of these things that we talked about from where you are to significantly improved health. And so that's a very important one, because as Wanda started to say, you don't want to just jump right into this. You want to do it in a very rational way, in a very thoughtful way. And in some cases, you want to work with a qualified practitioner. But at least you will be aware of, familiar with a very, very powerful system, a very powerful alternative to some of the more hazardous conventional approaches. And as I said, tomorrow you'll see where it is valuable and how you can integrate them when appropriate. So let's go to our topic at hand. I did this presentation, if you remember a few years back, there was a big pandemic and everybody's worried about swine flu and getting your flu shots, etc. And so that's what, when I first put this together, but a lot of those principles, I've updated them, of course, over time, but they're the same principles that have been around since even the early 19th century with the first flu pandemic, etc. And so the point here is, just like we talked about after seeing that cancer presentation, nobody should ever feel afraid about cancer again. You should feel that you can be victorious with cancer, and you can live with it for 50 years. So even if you did nothing at all, take your time and be thoughtful. If you get a diagnosis, if you know friends or family, tell them to think about this and get a valid second opinion. And same thing with the vascular issues, diabetes, etc. These are very, very amenable to the things that we talk about. And the same is true. And so we took the most difficult diseases. We saw how easy that was, or how simple it is to use natural approaches with cancer and vascular disease. So colds and flu, that should be like a no-brainer. But it works for everything. That's the whole point. It works for simple things, it works for complex things. And a lot of people, unfortunately, they have the allergies, the respiratory issues, etc. So let's talk about this. So the topic is, today we're going to understand the difference between colds and flu, the conventional versus the natural remedies, and we'll talk about some herbal cocktails for this, just like we did for the herbal cocktail for chemotherapy and radiation and surgery, and herbal Coumadin and herbal approaches to the blood pressure medications, etc. We're going to do the same thing for respiratory issues. And how can we be better prepared? First of all, colds and flu, there's a big controversy. What is it? Some people think that flu is just a more advanced cold, but there are some significant differences. With a cold, as you can see, you have the runny nose, the stuffy nose, the runniness, the sore throat, sneezing, slight fever. You can actually function fairly well through it, though. It might be a little bit annoying, and you may get a headache. On the other hand, flu is a lot more complicated. It's you have the dry hacking cough, you get the muscle aches and pains, the headache, you don't want to eat, you really feel miserable, you're fully congested, all kinds of discomfort. There's usually, unlike a cold, you can have nausea, vomiting, and fever. And so it's not exactly like a cold. They're both viral, but there are some significant differences. The point is, and you'll see that tomorrow, a lot of these distinctions you really don't need. But let's stay tuned for tomorrow for that. But for influenza, which a lot of people get concerned about, you notice nobody asks you to take, and if they could, they'd do it, to take a shot for the cold. But as soon as they say flu, everybody wants to shake and panic. All of a sudden, you have to do all of these extra difficult things. And, you know, just looking around, you don't see a whole lot of people passing out from colds or flu or dying. But it is a specific disease. And the point I wanted to make in pointing out some of these things is sometimes just there's more terror and scare tactics put in this than is necessary. And when you give something a disease classification, cold isn't a disease classification. So, you know, while there are decongestants and antihistamines, etc., it might not be covered by insurance. You can't say, well, I had a cold. But if you say I had the flu, all of a sudden, the whole economic infrastructure gets called into play. And as I said, according to the medical infrastructure, it's not simply a cold. It's not. But it's not really that much more problematic. But you know, people get concerns about endemics and pandemics, etc. And it is capable of spreading a little bit faster. Let me ask you a question. I'm going to ask it now, and I'll tell you if you're right tomorrow. The test answer will come tomorrow. Are colds contagious? Is the flu contagious? Just think about that. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. You're going to be very surprised. And I want you to think about this. My good friend Nelson over here got a cold. How long would it take for everybody in this room to get a cold? And even more importantly, will everybody else get a cold? Just because Nelson walked into the room. What if he had the flu? How many people would get the flu as a result of him having the flu? Just think about some of these things. Start observing and looking at your environment and start asking yourself some questions about whether or not some of these things are really contagious. Because if they were, the question you want to ask is, how come 100% of the people in that particular environment don't get it? And the question you really want to ask is, what percentage do get it? And you might be surprised at what that number is. You might think it's 90, 80, but think again. But anyhow, the fact of the matter is, when it comes to influenza pandemics, there really are limited studies. There's not a whole lot of studies out there. There's a lot of panic that occurs, but there's not a whole lot of studies that talk about it. Everybody knows that by now there's an increased resistance to antibiotics. Do antibiotics work for colds and flu? How many people think it does? Wow. How many people think it doesn't? How many people don't know and don't care? Well, it doesn't work at all. Biotics are bacteria. Antibiotics are antibacteria. What are the colds and flu? They're viruses. There's no known medicine for viruses. And yet, when you get certain viruses, like polio is a virus, they want to come out with vaccinations. It's kind of interesting. How come they don't have vaccinations for bacteria? A lot of questions that you should start asking about some of these things. There's a lot of resistance to the antibiotics as a result of having them around for a long time. As a matter of fact, one of the biggest issues today, which we'll talk a little bit more about tomorrow, is the fact that a lot of people's issues are directly related to the antibiotics. And does anybody know what MRSA is? Methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus. There's something that it's an antibiotic. It's a resistant, and you get resistance to it when you're in hospitals. As a matter of fact, people go in the hospitals for one thing, and they come out with this terrible issue of this infection that they didn't have before they went into the hospital. And that's what that is. Now, the other thing is, did you know that there's no really valid studies for vaccinations? When they do vaccination studies, they don't do vaccinations versus placebo, vaccinations versus vitamin C, or vaccinations versus herbs. They do vaccinations versus mock vaccinations against other vaccinations. People don't realize that. So when you start looking at these studies, you know, information again is power. And I think I told you when I started looking at the PDR and looking at some of these studies, after a while they become very laughable. And I bet nobody here has ever looked at one single study. There's a lot. How many people have looked at any scientific study, any health study for any medicine? Wow, yeah, there's a doctor over there. and there's a nurse over here and a nurse's husband. Who else looks at that? And she can tell you. Some of these studies, they're laughable if you use your good common sense. Now, do anybody know what an adjuvant is? An adjuvant is something that enhances a particular vaccination or a particular medicine, which means that it accelerates and enhances its effect. That's not necessarily good, especially when you understand that all pharmaceuticals, and they are useful in certain instances. We'll talk about that again in tomorrow's presentation. But even when they're useful, they're always toxic. They're always immunosuppressants. All drugs are immunosuppressants. All drugs are poisons. And the medical doctors will tell you that. They learn that in school. She learned that in school. It's not something that they advertise. When you come into the office, they don't have the skull bones and crosses and say, you're coming into a toxic zone. Because most people say, well, they start asking a lot of questions, but all of them. And so if you have anthrax poisoning for something, and somebody tells you, well, I want to enhance the effect of it. Maybe you might want to take a step back and say, well, wait a minute. Why am I doing this again? And what are the alternatives? That's why in any drug that's out there, you look at all of the side effects and the adverse effects, it's a whole laundry list of things. And a lot of people, they look at it and say, wow, I'd rather have the issue that I have rather than some of these other things. And unfortunately, even though a lot of us are intelligent, we don't even read it. Because even in my practice, a lot of people come to me for issues, and I just go to the PDR. I have this little pocket PDR, which everybody should have. And I said, well, your sex drive and your cramps, did you see what the side effect of this medication? They don't have any clue that it's directly related to the medication. And so they're not coming in for the reason that I have their medication, for example, for blood pressure medication. They're not coming in for blood pressure because clinically they think they're doing well. They're coming in for some of the other things. Well, I have a pain in the back, and it might be the kidneys. Referral pain from the kidneys because of what the blood pressure medicine is doing and things of that nature. Did you know that the makers of all vaccinations are exempt from liabilities? They wouldn't even make it because don't you think the manufacturers know that it's a problem? So they're given exemption from liabilities so that they go and manufacture it. It's a big economic and political situation more than, as a matter of fact, I remember about 2 years ago, there was a flu epidemic, that there was this big push to get these vaccines and everything, and then they didn't have enough supply. 2 weeks later, oh, guess what? There's no problem. So the problem was as they were gearing up, but do you know how long it takes to make a vaccine? It takes a year. You have to incubate an egg, and you have to go through all of this processing. And one of the things about viruses, they're always changing. They're always morphing. So the vaccine that they made a year ago, for the flu, the new vaccine. So it's really interesting how that really works. And the public officials, the public health officials, and everybody get into all of this big frenzy, and all of us kind of get in a frenzy with them as well. So hopefully we'll be able to learn some nice, easy approaches to avoid the cold and flu to begin with. And that's what we're going to talk about. Some very powerful, natural, common sense, easy to use approaches that are available to both prepare for and to recover from the flu. Let's quickly go through some of the prepare fors. There's about 5 of these principles that we want to do. And these are common sense things. So what do you do in preparation? Do you go out and get the best gas mask that you can? Now, again, if Nelson came in here and he started sneezing, and I was out in the vestibule there selling these gas masks, were you running by them all? Or if I scared you enough, if I showed you a bunch of bugs running around and everything, I could make a whole lot of money selling these things. But do you need that level of preparation? Maybe not. Let's look at some common sense approaches. First of all, if you believe that it's contagious, and stay tuned for tomorrow, but for those of you who believe it, and if you believe it, a lot of times there is something to psychosomatic issues. If you really believe it, you can get sick. But if you do believe it, avoid close contact with people who are sick. I know as a practitioner, I'm always getting all kinds of clients. It's kind of interesting when you think about it. You know, especially when you think of the cold or flu. When people have cancer, people aren't afraid of getting cancer from that person, are you? Is it contagious? If somebody has blood pressure, you're not afraid of that person. Shaking hands and everything. And I shake hands and I hug my clients sometimes. But if they have a cold, oh, don't hug me. Don't shake my hand. All of a sudden, it's a big deal. Now, you're not afraid of the cancer of blood pressure or MS or Parkinson's or senility, but all of a sudden, when it comes to the cold, everybody is in a big panic. But this is what they tell you, stay home, and there's some good advice to this. And we'll talk about why some people get it and some people don't tomorrow. You know, cover your mouth, and if somebody sneezed on you, are you going to come down with a flu or cold? Do they have to sneeze in your eyes, or what if they sneeze on your hand? Would it crawl up and washing your hands, and it's kind of interesting. You're watching a lot of the things that go, and some of these things you just want to do out of common courtesy. But it's a good practice just to kind of keep your germs to yourself anyway. Nobody wants them. But another good practice is get plenty of sleep. That's one of the biggest issues. Remember we said you can be doing all the other good things. You can be doing all the good eating, getting good sunlight, enough water, all these great herbs and everything. But if you're not getting enough sleep, it's not going to do you any good at all. Get plenty of fluids, eating nutritious foods. What do we say about natural health? There is no silver bullet in natural health. It's an integrated, comprehensive approach. And so you want to use those natural laws of health in a very comprehensive way. And it's not, unfortunately, and that's why some people get upset, because it's not multiple choice. I'll take one from here. There's 7 laws, and when you use it in an integrated, 8 laws, when you use it in an integrated, comprehensive way, it works good. So you can't I was talking to somebody, one of the questions I got, the person says, I eat perfect, but I don't exercise, and they're wondering why they can't get over their diabetes. No, you have to exercise as well as eat. If you exercise and you eat terribly, you still have a chance of getting diabetes. But if you eat right and you exercise appropriately, that is a more powerful synergistic way of dealing with it. And the same thing with any other issue. Of course, you want to avoid smoking and anything that's going to compromise the functional integrity of the respiratory system. Okay, avoid contributors to the flu. We spent a lot of time on milk. We don't have to spend a whole lot more time. But milk is the most acid-producing and the most mucus-producing food you can put in your system. It causes all kinds of congestion, even people that think that they have ear problems and tingling and even tinnitus and things of that nature. It's really congestion of the sinus cavities. You want to avoid foods that cause sensitivities. If you're gluten intolerant, for example, wheat and bread is not your friend. Sweets and hydrogenated oils are problems, and medications that drive the nose. What are those? Those are antihistamines. Because you need that fluid, otherwise it's going to, if you don't have the fluid, if you can't, and you're not washing out the viruses from your system, they can coagulate and concentrate in a dry environment. Avoid public places. We talked about that already. This is an extension to covering your nose, washing your hands, etc. And then use natural remedies. It's the point that I was talking about. Flu vaccine may not effectively eliminate the occurrence. As a matter of fact, a lot of my clients are even telling me now that their friends at work who are getting the flu shots, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks later, they're still hacking and wheezing. One of the things that you need to understand about viruses, they have a limited life. They kind of run their course. There's no saying if you do something if you take medicine or you take even herbs for a cold, you'll get rid of it in a week. If you do nothing at all, you get rid of it in 7 days. it basically, and you see that around. You don't see people, and some people, they don't buy anything. You don't see them running around their whole life with the same cold. All viruses have a limited life. And it's just that sometimes that life is kind of long. And if it's not eliminated from the system, it can develop into some serious problems, like polio and other viral issues of that nature. There are many alternatives for colds and flu, and that's what we want to focus our time and attention for the rest of tonight. So we're going to talk about 12 colds and flu remedies. And some of these are so nice. And remember I promised you yesterday, you're going to find Nelson and say, Nelson, get a cold and pass it on to me so I can try some of these remedies. Because some of these are really interesting. So let's go through. The first one is to relieve nasal congestion. Anybody know what a Neti Douche is? Yeah, there's a couple of different ways. You can see there's an instrument right here. This is a Neti Douche. And you fill it up with saline solution, and you can also put herbs in there sometimes. Some people use water with a little bit of noni juice. And I don't know if they have that here. I know they have it in Jamaica quite a bit. But you can just use warm water and salt, and you put it through one nose, and it just drains all the way out through the other nose. Nice, simple thing. You can pour cold water in the back of the neck, which could be a little bit more difficult. This is a favorite that a lot of people will like. And this is one of those cases where when you have a cold and you do this, you almost wish that you can do it all the time. And this is where you just get a towel, you get some steam, and you get over it, and you get some steam water, and you can put a little eucalyptus in there, a little mullein, and it really opens up everything. And it feels so good that you almost want to be sick sometimes so you can get that good feeling. And what some people do is they hang wet towels out just so that you can get some moisture in the environment. What my son did one time, he was a little congested and he knew about this. He locked himself in the bathroom and turned the shower. Now, that gets expensive because you got that shower running, but it works. It opens everything up and it kind of feels good. It clears up the face too, you know, because you hydrate everything. So that's one way of really easing nasal congestion. For the upper lip, you know, you get that really raw feeling, and in the nose you get that irritation. There are a couple of nice natural things that you can do. Coconut oil is one of the best things that you can use. Coconut oil, and you know, let food be your medicine, let your medicine be your food. Coconut oil, you can eat it. I have a gallon of it. I put a couple of dollops in it. I make my own coconut milk or coconut water, and I use that as the basis of my smoothies. I also use it for my face, my hair. My son, my youngest son, who gets ashy legs, he loves the coconut oil to put on his legs, and it works like anything. It absorbs nice. It's not greasy, and it works very nice on the lip, the nose. The lauric acid in there is very healing. For weight management, lauric acid. Coconut oil is one of those saturated fats that's a short chain fatty acid that actually helps you to lose weight, as opposed to the long chain saturated fats. So it's very bioharmonious lubricant outside and inside. Just a great food, and it's indigenous to a lot of the islands. So you should be taking advantage of it. There are other oils out there. Calendula is very good for the skin. Yes, sir.
Diaper rash.
Who?
Don't use the Dosage. Diaper rash. Don't get diaper rash. Slap it all over baby's bottom.
You don't use it?
Don't use the Dosage.
Oh, I thought you said don't use coconut oil. Oh, yeah.
Coconut oil.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, you don't use any of those. Oh, I agree. Oh, yeah. It's great for diaper rash, any kind of rashes or skin issues. Calendula oil, noni oil, which are not as common, also work extremely well. Okay, we talked about this. You want to avoid antibiotics and antihistamines. Anybody know what AMAP is? As much as practical. Sometimes, but you want to avoid it. Antibiotics have no effect over viruses, and it's a primary cause of antibiotic resistance, and actually can cause other problems. Matter of fact, after the flu issue and the colds, my clients are coming to me because, especially the females, with urinary tract infections. And it's directly related to the antibiotics, because the thing about antibiotics, they don't discriminate. They're indiscriminate, so they don't only go after the bad bacteria, they go after the good guys also. And the problem is the bad guys proliferate a lot faster after the antibiotics are out of the system. So your ratio gets thrown off, and it's a cause for a lot of urinary tract infections, etc. And you see a lot of people who keep using antibiotics for colds or flu or for whatever issues, for fevers, for infections, they get this systemic urinary tract infection. I've had some women that have had urinary tract infections for 11 years. And can you imagine that kind of misery? And they get over it in 6 weeks. There's really good herbs like uva ursi, buku root, juniper berries that flush out the kidneys, and uva ursi is real. It tastes terrible. But if you have an issue, you'll take it for the few days. It flushes everything out. It kills all the infection and everything. And the problem is, again, the antihistamines are too dehydrating. Now, if you know, for an emergency situation, to use it for that might be okay, but you don't want to use it on a regular basis. It just dries out all the membranes, and then it breeds. It's a breeding ground for the proliferation of bacteria or viruses. Okay, sufficient sunlight. Did anybody know that sunlight is an immune enhancer? Real powerful. We're not going through the laws of health in any detail. That's another thing. We're not going through the food combining. We're not going through the laws of health in as much detail as I usually do, because what we're trying to do is just kind of hit on them here and there. But vitamin D is one of the most powerful immune enhancers known to man. As a matter of fact, for colds and flu, one of the things I recommend is a therapeutic dosage of vitamin. See, when do you normally get the cold? You usually get it in the winter time, when you're not out as much. And so you're not getting as much sunlight. And we already talked about the people of color, they need more sunlight to begin with. So how do you get a therapeutic dosage of sunlight? Well, you use D3. Now, for years they used to use D2. The D2 is the toxic vitamin D that can accumulate in the system and cause all kinds of damage throughout the system, including the liver, and other vital organs. But if you can't get sufficient sunlight, you want to get enough D3. And the therapeutic dosage I use 50,000 international units for 3 days, and then a maintenance dose of 5,000 units a day. And you can do that even during the winter. So vitamin D is a very powerful immune enhancer. We also talked about how it's so important. It converts the cholesterol on your skin. Sunlight to vitamin D, that's the best way to get it. But again, if you don't have enough exposure, the D3 works really well. Sunlight has a lot of really great values that people don't appreciate. It's so abundantly supplied and easily available, like air and water. We tend to take it for granted. This is another one. Remember we talked about yesterday when we talked about, and we said it also for cancer. Of the 12 systems of the body, the nervous system, the circulatory system, the lymphatic system, all of the systems, the digestive system, which one takes up the most energy? Anybody remember? Digestion takes up more energy than any of them. So eating less food, what does it do? It releases, and the body knows how to heal itself. And one of the things the body's trying to heal itself is trying to digest, is trying to get rid of all of that food. See, everything that you eat, the body has to break it down and either use it or eliminate it. And so it has to do all that work, and that work is energy that it doesn't have to do the other things that it knows how to do. To build macrophages to go and eat. Macrophages are the white blood cells that eat up the viruses and eat up the bacteria. But it can't do all of this at the same time. You know, there's just about so much energy that's there, and the organs work in a very hierarchical way. It does the most important things and then it does the least important things. That's why that food combining is so important, and sometimes unwittingly, and that's why people get, just to make a transition on this point, you got to be real careful about what you eat, and a lot of people eat their watermelon for dessert, good or bad. It's the absolutely worst thing you can do. Why? It only takes about 20 minutes to a half an hour to digest. It's over 90% water. And I see so many people, there's an old saying in the natural field, you eat them alone, or leave them alone. You don't even mix it with other fruit. You can mix them with other melons, because it's so efficient that if you had meat or carbohydrates or anything else, it just sits there, because the body says, I got to take care of this other food before you kill yourself, and it ferments by the time the body gets to it. So that's the principle with eat less food. You free up all of that energy so that it can do other things, like cleaning out and fighting whatever is assaulting you, sending all kinds of natural built steroids to go after inflammation in the nose and all of that. So very, very important, powerful principle. Somebody asked earlier, is it better to have 3 meals a day and 2 snacks, or just 3 meals a day? Remember what my answer was? 2 meals are better than 3. So of course 3 is better than, and you never rest when you eat. When you constantly are eating, or if you don't give yourself enough time between meals, the stomach never rests. It's like, remember we talked about this, like running a marathon, and before you finish the marathon, then you run a 10K. Before you finish the 10K, you're running 10 miles. You'll exhaust yourself. And the same thing is happening to the system. And after years of that, the pancreas breaks down, you can get diabetes, the colon gets all built up, and then you get irritable bowel syndrome, you get gas, you get bloating, because you're never getting any complete breakdown. The skin starts cracking and breaking down because the organs of elimination aren't working efficiently, so it has to use the largest organ in the body. All of those things. So eating less food is a very, very, very powerful principle. And we're going to talk about therapeutic fasting when we talk about putting it all together Saturday. This is one of those ones that after you've had this, you say, oh boy, it's funny. When we use heavy metal detoxes like the chelation pesto, which is the garlic and cilantro, etc., they're so tasty that the clients call up after they got rid of all the heavy metals 6 months down the road. Can I still eat that? It's food. This is so good when you take it. And especially congested and you're feeling, and you get that nice hot vegetable broth. You have a pinch of cayenne in there. I mean, even your brain starts opening up in it, and you feel that pop, and the congestion frees up, and just everything opens up. And let me tell you what the trick is now to the vegetable broth. Because some people make mistakes. What they do is, the big mistake they make is they throw everything in there at once. What you want to do is you want to get your more robust vegetables, like your carrots and your potatoes, and you want to put those in there. And you don't want to boil it. You just want to kind of simmer it. If you have the time, let it tease the nutrients out without beating it up. It's like, if I took you and I put you in 110 degrees, you're going to be kind of a sad soldier. You're going to jump, and it's going to be a little bit of a shock. But if I put you in 90-degree water and work it up to 110, you wouldn't even know it. I can get you up to 105. The story about the frog. He's just swimming around, and he'll just boil to death if you let it go up slowly. So if you simmer it, it works the best. And then you take those real powerful natural antibiotics. What are the most powerful natural antibiotics? No, garlic and onions. You can do an onion poultice and cure asthma and respiratory issues. Great for bronchitis. So you want to take advantage of that. So the ginger is a little bit more robust, so you can put it in there with the others. But especially the raw garlic and onions, you mince it up and you put it in your little dish, and at the very end, you put it in there. After it's already simmered, and you get the highest potency, because it will dissipate very, very quickly. Even when you cut an onion, When you first get a real fresh onion, it can even make you tear. But if you come back an hour later, you can take a bite, there's nothing there. Once you cut it, and the enzyme and the inactive ingredient mixes, that's where you get the most potent smell and the potent healing, therapeutic action. It's right in the beginning, so you want to take advantage of that. As a matter of fact, what you might want to do is if you're doing a cup of it, you have that garlic on the side and you throw it in after you pour it in, and then you sip it with that raw garlic being dissipated out through it. You see how that works? Very, very powerful, and it is tasty. And this is again one of those, I can't believe my client said, can I still have that vegetable broth? It's a food. You can use this as a preventive. So if you see Nelson coming in, he's sneezing and his handkerchief fell on the floor, and so you can go home and get a nice, that's a good excuse to go and get a hot vegetable broth to make sure that you don't give a virus or bacteria an opportunity to get any kind of foothold at all. Now for sore throat, this is another one of those things. I'm going to tell you a couple of tricks. You can gargle with any combination of, the salt water is the home remedy that everybody knows about. Activated charcoal is another powerful one. I'm going to talk a little bit more about charcoal. That's one of the most powerful, natural, inexpensive remedies out there. But activated charcoal solution, the real powerful one is this apple cider vinegar. When you when you get that first little tickle in the throat, what you can do is you take about a half an ounce of the apple cider vinegar. You take it and you put it on your throat and you gargle for a whole minute. It just kills everything that's over there. All the viruses, bacteria there. And then you want a little bit if you do it right in the beginning, right when you start feeling that tickle and you swallow just a little bit, it'll stop the virus, the bacteria from ever getting into your lung. And if you do that, you can knock it out in the very first day, a lot of times. Another powerful one, it hurts a little bit, but oregano oil. That stuff is, yeah, it smarts you a little bit. But you take a drop of that and you put it under the tongue. It's strong, but a drop. And boy, you do that every 2 to 3 hours, you'll knock it out in one day. Yeah, you see, have you done that? Isn't that powerful? Who? Flu fly. Wow. Oh, yeah. Yeah, oh yeah. What do you call it? Flu fly? Flu fly. Okay, you hear that? What is powerful stuff? Flu fly is a special brand of oregano oil. That's very potent. You learn something new every day. Golden seal is one of the most powerful antiviral, antimicrobial, anti-anything that's ugly herbs out there. It's powerful enough to kill malaria. That's how powerful it is. And so, you see what I say? You know what's nice? What I put here, there are so many different options out there. Peppermint oil is another one that's good. Has very powerful antimicrobial properties. But what I want to do is I want to show you that there is a variety of very powerful, easily available opportunities out there. And then, you use your judgment. If it's just a little tiny thing, just salt water works a lot of times. But here are some more potent ones. And then another thing you can do is a heating compress. I'm going to talk a little bit more about hydrotherapy and compresses in a little bit. So I'll come back to that. But you want to use that compress right over the throat. Or any local area. If you have a sinus issue, you can put it right over the eyes and over the cheeks. The throat, and poultice for the chest, the compresses, etc. Okay, here's another one. See, this is where I was saying you want to get sick, so you have an excuse to go get a massage. Exercise. What are the two types of exercises? There's active exercise, and what is massage? Passive exercise. Boy, you can run 20 miles, or you get somebody to give you a good deep tissue massage for half an hour. Which is better? See, Nelson knows. He said, you know, I can't wait till I get that cold so I can go get my massage. It's fantastic. What pump do you have for the lymphatic system? None. Exercise. That's the only pump. So if you don't have an opportunity to do that, this is passive, and it engages that lymphatic system. So it passively engages the lymphatic system. Hot cold massage is particularly good. And you get that vasodilation going, where you get the constriction and that pumping action, opening and closing. So you get your blood vessels get a massage, in addition to the muscles and the tissues. Relaxes the entire body, and it encourages healing. All of this stuff, very, very, very positive. And you know, another thing is you don't need to wait till you're sick. Just like you don't have to wait till you're sick to have the hot vegetable broth and these kinds of things. A massage every now and then is really good. But you know, like I said, if you need an excuse, there you go. Tell someone, I feel something coming. Oh, I got to go get a massage. Get some good massage oils, get some eucalyptus. Boy, you can really enjoy your sickness. You know, you can kind of look forward to it. Okay. Here's one of my favorites, activated charcoal. I want to talk about this a little. This is one of the most powerful, simple, natural remedies known to man, and very inexpensive, and people don't take enough advantage of it. Activated charcoal absorbs over 80 times its weight in poison. It's very porous, and it has an electrostatic quality to it where it adsorbs, not absorbs. What's the difference? Absorbs. Yeah, it adds to it. Adds those pulls. It attracts to it. There's an and there's a whole host of poisons that is attracted to charcoal, and it has all these porous holes in it, and a little bit covers a lot of area. So you can make a slurry. A slurry means it's kind of like a light mud, but it's very powerful. It'll kill off all the infections, and it's really great for if you have diarrhea. It absorbs all of those toxins and poisons. It'll stop it like that. You don't want to overdo it because then you can get constipated. But and then there's what's the easy way to what's the poor man's way of getting rid of constipation real quickly? Anybody know? Water. Yeah, but what if water isn't enough?
Apple and first thing in the morning.
How about hot water with a teaspoon of salt? Boy, you take a quart of water, put a teaspoon of salt. Boy, you better be close to the, that 50-yard dash, 50-foot dash to the bathroom door. So these simple things. So if you overdo it with the charcoal, here's a simple way to get yourself back in balance. Now, tablets or capsules work. Now, the advantage of and somebody asked a question about capsules yesterday. For certain things, like for example, for charcoal, sometimes you need up to a tablespoon, at least a couple of teaspoons, and you need sometimes up to 14 capsules. That's the disadvantage. The advantage, of course, is it's easier to transport. So when I came over here to Bermuda, the powder can get messy and this, that, and the other thing. So the capsules are easy to transport, and part of the first aid kit that I tell everybody, including myself, when you travel, is to take your charcoal capsules. Because if you get Montezuma's revenge, if you're in Mexico, or what the food differences, you can open up a few of those capsules and then you swallow it, and it'll resolve that issue very quickly. You can make a nice paste out of a poultice, and quite frankly, if a lot of you, some of these things, especially when you start talking about poultices and compresses, you're going to talk about hydrotherapy. If you don't know what that is, guess what? Wanda is giving a class this weekend. She's an expert at this stuff. So if you don't, and she can show you how to apply it real well. And if there's no room in her class, because I know they're real popular, when people find out about these things, they sign up. Maybe you can talk her into having a separate class. As a matter of fact, another things you might want to do, now that I'm looking over here, I see her and Linda, you might want to have them do a food preparation class. And quite frankly, I wish I would hear her and do some of those smoothies. They have some smoothies and some drinks that maybe you can airship one to me when you do it. I'll look at it on video, and maybe you can transport it to me. But you got some real talented people here, and they can show you how to do these things in a very effective and intelligent way that work through all those processes. Because especially when you talk about chocolate, this can get messy real quick. So you want to be careful. It can mess up your floor, your walls. So you want to be able to know, am I right or wrong? Anybody that has worked with this, they know you got to be careful. So I'm showing you these principles, but again, you want to use some discernment and you want to do it intelligently. Charcoal is one of the most powerful natural remedies for poisons. There are instances where actually they've done experiments where somebody would drink the charcoal and then swallow arsenic right after it or other poison. It wouldn't damage them at all. That's how powerful. It just absorbs it all. It doesn't even let it go into the rest of the system. Very, very powerful. I'm not recommending it. And you got, but it's very powerful for adsorbing, attracting the poisons to it away from the epithelial, the lining of the gastrointestinal system, etc. Good for diarrhea, as I mentioned. Good for stomach aches, because a lot of times, all that gas and bloating and all that fermentation that's going on, it'll absorb a lot of that gas for you as well. Also, with the bacteria, H. pylori, bacteria, all of that, it can help for a whole host of situations. We talked about the tablets. They're convenient when traveling, and you can gargle with it. You can use it for a lot of different purposes. And then, there are people who have there are certain things that the activated charcoal works faster and more effectively than nothing else for, especially certain stings and bites and snake venom, bruises, tumors. It works very well for breast tumors and tumors of the liver. Very, very powerful. I know we're talking about colds and flu, but while it's the point I'm trying to make, and the fundamental point is, just because these things are good for a particular incident we talk about, it doesn't mean you only have to use it for that. It's good for a whole host of issues. So if you have congestion in other places in the kidneys or liver, or even marks on your legs or boils or rashes, you can use it for that as well. So let's be broader in our outlook and not have the tunnel vision that think that there has to be a specific thing, a specific remedy for a specific situation. The nice thing about natural things, there's a broad spectrum of things that it applies to. So all of those things it works for extremely well. Here's one of those other nice things that you almost wish you were sick so you can have an excuse to do it, so people don't call you lazy or what are you doing, fooling around in that tub. But hydrotherapy is powerful. I think that's what your class is, the fundamental part of your class. Foot baths, if you have a headache, you do a foot bath, it'll just pull that heat right from your head. And contrast foot baths are particularly good. It improves the circulation throughout the entire body. One of the most powerful natural antiviral and antibacterial protocols known to man is what? What is it called? Shout it out. Fever therapy. Right? See, a lot of people, when you get a fever, when you get a cold or flu, they say they want to cut the fever. That is your best friend. Most bacteria and viruses can't live in above 102 degrees. And so a lot of people, they get 101 degrees and they want to run and get something, like aspirin, to lower the fever. What you need to do is get that hot broth to try to raise it. And I get a lot of parents, especially when they're kids, people really, they panic when they're babies. Their 1 and 2 year olds have a fever of 99, 100, 101. And I remember this one poor guy. He called me, he said, please talk to my wife. He came to the seminar. And the baby had a fever of 101, and they were arguing about, well, do we need to take him to the emergency room? And then he called me and said, oh, try to see if you can get it up to 103. And she said, oh. All of a sudden, the husband was validated. And I said, if you can, try to get it up to 106. You won't be able to do it, and if it goes up to 104, 105, then you can put a cold cloth on it. It's very easy to get it back down again. Very easy, simple, natural ways. But you know, how high can the body go? Let me ask a fundamental question. Have you ever heard of anybody, any funeral, of anybody that died of a high fever? Anywhere? I haven't. And I've been, you know, I've read it in the literature. And did you know that when people die of a so-called fever and they do the autopsy, what they find is that there was a microorganism in the brain that the fever couldn't kill, and the microorganism is what killed the person. Fever, now you don't, I say that because what I wanted to, the point I wanted to make is you really don't want your body to go above 106 degrees. If you can get it that high, let me know. I've been doing this for years. I try to get my, I have to work like I have to drink hot broth and sit in 110, 112 degrees of water to try to get my temperature up to 103. I've tried to get it, I think once I maybe have gotten it up to 104. It's very, and you know, just like a lot of systems, you know, when you get to a certain point, it cuts off. The body knows what it's doing. As a matter of fact, one of the things I do is I said, not only do you want to try to get that baby's fever up, put it under blankets. And then they'll sweat like anything, and it breaks, and all of a sudden the kid gets up and is running around the house. Because it killed that whole threshold that was having you crying and cranky and everything. It got over that threshold, and you're back and ready to go. Fever therapy is powerful. And you get in there, and that hot bath. As a matter of fact, I was talking to Wanda this morning. We were over there at the beach. She says, you know, when I'm in the water, I never have any pain. I can't walk, right? Water is powerful. So it relaxes you, it opens up the pores, all of these great things. So hydrotherapy is another one of those powerful things. And what is a blood massage? I just told you, it's a contrast shower. What's the contrast shower? Whoa, boy, you guys are getting too tough. You guys are like trained killers. You're second-degree black belts. By the end of this, you'll be ninth. That's it. Contrast showers. What is a contrast shower? How long in the hot? At least a minute. A minute to 2 minutes. If you can do 3 minutes. Now, when you're doing a foot bath, it should be at least 3 minutes. And then not longer than a minute in the cold water, but 15 to 30 seconds. And do you go, when you first do it, do you go from the very hottest to the very coldest immediately? No, you do warm, cool, warmer, cooler. And trust me, if you do it, incidentally, you have to do it an iteration of 3 times for the therapeutic effect. Minimum. How many can you do? You can do as many as you want. I usually do 7. I do 5 to 7. And if you have stiff back, I have, one of my issues was chronic back problems that I had since I was in my 20s. And I have it even now. And I tell you all the crazy stuff I'm doing, running and jumping. And when I'm really stiff and I get out of that bed and I take a contrast shower, it's gone. I'm ready to go out running, exercise, anything. It's how expensive is it? Not very cheap, very powerful. But remember, a lot of people, when I tell them about contrast, they say, oh yeah, I always turn on the cold water before I get out. That's not a contrast shower. It's good, it's better than just hot, because then it just closes up and it's like you're going to run a race and you start at 10 yards and finish the race. A contrast is the minimum of 3 times for the therapeutic effect. And what do you end on, the hot or the cold? Boy, you guys are good. Absolutely. And when you get out, when you end up with the hot and you get out, you shudder. When you end up with the cold and you get out, you start warming up. Because the body, you're colder than the air. Isn't that interesting how that works out? So you end with the cold. And please be intelligent about it. Start off in the beginning, and if you only can do 3 iterations, do warm, cool, a little bit warmer, a little bit cooler. The first day. You don't have to do it become a 9th degree black belt in contrast showers the first time you do it. You know, you can give yourself a few days, but I'm telling you, and when I first tell people, they think I lost my mind when I say this. Even in the middle of the winter, after a while, you can't get the water cold enough. You can't get it. You can get it hot enough. I mean, you can feel it, but you can't, because you know the water's only going to go. It's not freezing. As a matter of fact, we have a pool in it, and what we would do is we would try to see if we can, what the record is that we can get to get that water cold, and so we go from the hot tub to the pool, and I think it was down to like 37 degrees. You know, our neighbors and our friends think we lost our mind, but we have a good old time. We get in there and then we jump right over to the hot tub, and you can have a nice little contrast fun. And then, but it's cold. As a matter of fact, it's so cold that it feels like needles and pins going through your body. But you know, when you're kind of crazy, you do these fun things. But you know, I'm here to report to you, I did not die from any of those. So it's not going to kill you. A hot foot bath, we talked about that, increases the blood flow, general warming of the entire body, relaxing, is comforting, and it helps with the inflammation of the feet. As a matter of fact, you know, there's a lot of people, they talk about how they have swollen feet. That contrast helps that really well. Gets what it does is, where the cold causes the blood vessels to constrict, the hot causes it to open, and you get that pumping effect, and it's a blood massage. That's exactly what it is. We talked about the hot tub bath. Not only does it relieve the congestion in the sinuses, but it relieves the congestion in the organs also, which you can't see inside. They get congested too. This water therapy is very powerful stuff. And you start to say, well, wow, I wish I can get sick so I can try some of this stuff. Now, you don't, because you know, you don't really appreciate, if you're feeling good already, you just might feel a little bit better. But if you're feeling terrible, the difference between here and here is much more than the difference from here to here. So if you're feeling good, you say, okay, yeah. But boy, when you get sick, you say, boy, can I get sick again so I can do that again? Okay, so we talked about the contrast showers. Okay, there's a lot of good cleansing herbs. The organs get congested, the colon, the liver, the kidneys, and I talked about some of these. A very inexpensive way to clean out the colon is castor oil. Cascara squat is a little stronger. Rhubarb, burdock root, dandelion is really good for the liver. So is Oregon grape. The point is, there's a whole lot of different strategies, good herbs. And I tell you, the poor man's cleanser is just a good old salt in warm water. This is excellent for cleansing out. And if you do get the cold or flu, just take advantage of the opportunity. Just clean and flush out everything. You know, take the full 7 to 10 days and just have a good old time and flush everything out. Uva ursi, juniper berries, buccal root, hydrangea, gravel root, like it sounds, it actually will crush and dissolve kidney stones. So some of these things you should just do once a year anyway, especially if you're on a protein diet, etc., just as for maintenance. So before those, one of the worst illnesses I've ever had when I got kidney stones. As a matter of fact, somebody told me it's like having a baby. That was the first time I became very empathetic for women. It says that's the only thing that you can describe that's close to that pain. Now, I don't know what it's like to have a baby, but boy, I feel sorry for women now. Boy, I was the baby. I was crying like the biggest baby you've ever seen. It's painful. And so what this will do, this hydrangea, this gravel root will dissolve it. Isn't that nice? Nice little, and these herbs are relatively inexpensive. And then the other supplements, we talked about D3. What we didn't talk about is therapeutic dosages of vitamin C. Now, you don't want to take too much vitamin C all the time, but you can take up to 2,000-3,000 milligrams for 3 to 10 days while you're going through any kind of a health episode, even a cancer, but particularly for respiratory issues. It's very, very helpful. And what I do is I do recommend therapeutic dosage of vitamin C and D3 if you do have the cold or flu, or if you're going through a particularly stressful period as a preventive for 2 to 3 days. You know what your work schedule is. You know what's going on. You know when you're having the relatives come over. You know, some relatives, not all. Some, you say, oh boy, this is like my son. He came over one time, the one that drinks all the beer, the one like 36 cases. He brought his girlfriend and his 3 kids. Boy, you know I had to take a little bit extra vitamin C then, and some D3. Yes?
Can you say something about ascorbic acid versus vitamin
Oh, that's powerful. Did you hear that? Should we say that for the Q&A section, or can we do it? Okay, can we do it now? Okay. That's what's so good about the questions and everything and participation. Because sometimes you just forget. Ascorbic acid. Don't waste your money. If a lot of people are spending don't even waste your money on 5,000 milligrams of ascorbic acid, 1,000 milligrams. It doesn't work. Ascorbic acid is what is sold as vitamin C. Vitamin C in nature never comes as isolated ascorbic acid. And ascorbic acid cannot work without the bioflavonoids. And the bioflavonoids only come in the whole food format, like in lemons or rose hips or acerola. So don't get isolated ascorbic acid. Don't even waste your money on it, because what it will do is it will search your body to find all the bioflavonoids it has. And let's say you take 1,000 milligrams, but you can only find enough bioflavonoids to satisfy 50 milligrams. You wasted all of the rest of that vitamin C, and you just stressed out your system trying to eliminate it all, and taxed your body, and created acidity. Thank you very much for bringing that up. But we can assume that you know this, because we talked about, where does ascorbic acid fit? It's in the very bottom of that hierarchy of nutrients. That's what's so beautiful. If you have the hierarchy of nutrients as your model, you know that ascorbic acid is problematic. It's like sugar. Sugar is an over-processed beet or sugar cane. Ascorbic acid is an over-processed vitamin C manufacturing facility that God gave. What is the manufacturing facility that God gave us? Plants. Right? So that plant is the apple, the oranges, all of the citrus fruits. They're very high in vitamin C. Now, what's the highest vitamin C? It's not actually any of those fruits. It's like some herbs like camu and other, right? Real powerful. They're like hundreds of times more potent. So you want to get these very potent whole food sources of vitamin C. Thank you so very much. Thank Greg for that. Let's say it again. What's vitamin U? What about vitamin U? I forgot. No, there is a vitamin U. I forgot what it was. I don't. Somebody asked me the other day, what do I think of vitamins? They're a waste of time. All of those isolates are a waste of time. I forgot what it was. I really did. I can't begin to tell you how much stuff I forgot, because it was so useless. And and it made me such a happier person, because I used to have all this stuff cataloged up here. Now I just have that. That simple model is so empowering, because it saves so much ergs of energy trying to remember a lot of stuff that I forgot. Do you remember what it was? Why didn't you tell us? Oh, I don't remember. Some useless thing. I think it's in cabbage, though, and cruciferous fruits. Yeah, I think it is. And I think it's for gastrointestinal issues and stomach problems. But see, I just don't focus on it. I eat cabbage. I eat coleslaw. And I get all the vitamin U I need. Enough for you and me in the coleslaw. Okay. Other supplements. Quercetin is real good. Nettles is really good. Mullein, all these milk thistle. Very, very powerful supplements that help with the natural antioxidants and natural anti-inflammatories and help with congestion. Milk thistle can actually rebuild the liver. And you can combine all of these with the nice 10-day program, nice 10-day fast. And I like this one. Oh, you probably can't see this. This says 3 days of fasting and some cleansing, and where you can work on the colon, skin, kidney, lungs that we talked about, herbs like castor oil, clay, steam bath. So you can have a good old time during this phase. And then And then you have 3 days, what does it say there? 3 days of juicing. Oh yeah, and that's when you want to see Linda. That's when you want to go to Linda's Wonders class. They got all these great juicing things. They taste real good. And when I say juicing, what's the hot juicing? It's called a broth, isn't it? So you can do hot and room temperature juicing. That's why I have the potassium broth there. It's liquids. What you want to do is have all this powerful liquid chemical therapy that God intended for us. That's God's chemotherapy. And it's not just for cancer, for everything. Colds, flu, chemical therapy. And his chemical therapy is juicing. That's God's therapy. It's very powerful. And you can put the garlic, cilantro, the ginger. You can put onions in there. Just a whole host of things. And then 4 days of raw food give your body, and it kind of flushes you out. You can put your sea vegetables in that formula, etc., and the sprouts. It's a great 10-day program that you can use while you're going through any kind of a health issue. Even if you're transitional, let's say you have, like we said, if you have high blood pressure, cancer, you can start your program with a 10-day program. Or you start making a transition, and it has to be individual. Sometimes, my healthier clients, what I mean by that is if they're not on a whole lot of medications, etc., you can start right away. Sometimes if you're on medication, you got to wean yourself off of that. And then after about a week or two, then you can do a 10-day program like this. And then number 12, there are very, very powerful immune enhancers and antiviral herbs. And I put some of my favorites here. Stabilized allicin is one of the most powerful antivirals known to man. Kills more things than penicillin. Cat's claw is another one. There's oregano oil we talked about. And what was that again? Foo-foo, or what did you call that? Flu fly. Flu fly. Oh yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Flu fly. Oregano oil, olive leaf. Bone set is one of those powerful herbs that actually we got a lot of really good results with the major flu pandemic in 1914. And people that used that, they had the fastest and most complete recoveries. Golden seal I talked about, antiviral, antimicrobial. I use that for any major issue, even people with Lyme disease, MS, etc. Actually, a lot of the MS is improperly or undiagnosed Lyme disease and other related kinds of disease. And then we already talked about garlic, onions. Echinacea is a very, very, very powerful immune enhancer. Elecampane and elderberry has very strong affinity for the respiratory system, and you can make nice, good synergistic combinations out of this to help with colds and flu. And here's the herbal antibiotic. Here's the kind of things that you can kind of put together in a synergistic fashion. If you notice, I put in there a little bit of flax, which also helps the brain, and it helps with congestion, inflammation, etc. The cilantro. So you get, this is a kind of combination that's detoxing you from heavy metals, helping ginger with the gastrointestinal system, the burdock root cleaning out the blood. And so you're getting a good, integrated, comprehensive, natural antibiotic. Powerful. And not all that expensive. And you don't need all of these. You don't need olive leaf and oregano oil. And quite frankly, you might not need more than 2 or 3 drops. That oregano oil is powerful stuff. And if you're not ready for it, you might want to avoid that and use something a little bit milder, like the olive leaf. Tahitian noni juice is one of my favorites. We gargle with it. We use it for cataracts. You put it in the eyes. You can put it right on the eyes, just like you can do with lemon or cayenne pepper, etc. Cayenne, noni is. There's an oil in noni that you can put right on the eye, right on the white of the eyes, and it relieves the pressure and it kills germs. And styes and what's that called? That conjunctivitis, those kinds of things. We talked about the potassium broth. So you can make a combination of these things while you're doing your hydrotherapy. And see, if you notice, when I talk about antibiotic, I'm not talking about any kind of a single ingredient. I'm talking about a synergistic combination of natural remedies. And I'm calling that the antibiotic. Not necessarily a pill, a powder, or a potion. Okay? You understand? It's a principle. So we have to have a kind of a paradigm shift. We think that when you talk about these things, you have to have one specific thing for one specific issue. But you can have a combination of things. And this is going to make a lot more sense when we talk tomorrow about those 7 major factors. Then you say, oh, that's why he had all those different things in there. Okay, so we kind of built up to tomorrow's presentation, which you really don't want to miss. So colds and flu, here's kind of the summary. All of these great things, you know, you want to avoid certain things like sugar, milk products, the foods that are problematic, sweets and fats, medications as much as practical, especially those that dry up the nose, light diet, the gargling, the herbs, the massage, these fun things, the sufficient fresh air, sunlight, a synergistic combination of those 8 laws of health, which are air, water, sunlight, nutrition, exercise, rest, moderation, and the most important of all, trust in divine power. He's the one that owns all of this. The healing doesn't come from the product, it comes from what he put in there, right from the beginning, when he established all these things before he established us. And then he said, after all of these things, then he said, let us make man in our image, and then he all this was there already. First he gave us air, he gave us water, he gave us sunlight, he gave us all these things beforehand. He gave us the fruits and vegetables. He gave us everything that we needed before he brought us on board. And one of the things I like to share, does anybody here believe in the Big Bang Theory? You know the world that came from, right? And so a lot of my friends are still there. And, you know, they tell me about the Big Bang Theory. Now, what do you think I say when people ask me if I believe in the Big Bang Theory? What do you think I say? Absolutely not? So you're crazy? Away from me, you heretic? What do you think I say? Yes, I do. As a matter of fact, they look at me kind of funny because they're expecting a big fight. You know how karate works, or jiu-jitsu? You take the force of the person and you use their force against them, so it blows them up. So when they tell me about the Big Bang Theory, what my response is, oh, you think there was only one Big Bang? No. You talking about just one? Oh, no, I believe in the Big Bang Theory. I can tell you at least about 9 or 10 Big Bangs, and then they look at me kind of funny. I say, oh yeah, no. Are you kidding me? You only think, how can you think of just one simple Big Bang Theory? And then I start telling them about Genesis. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And the earth was formless and void, right? The Spirit of God was floating over the waters. Then God said, let there be light. I said, can you imagine the commotion, the amount of noise that happened? Can you imagine? Boom! Light. Then he says, boom! How many times did God say something in Genesis 1? He said it 8 times, 9 times. I said, every time God says something, things happen, things moved. And you know what? Get your Bible, go in the index. It says, when God speaks, his voice is like thunder. I said, yeah, I believe in the Big Bang. Let me tell you all about the Big Banger. The one who's making the Big Bang, who's making all the noise. Yeah, I believe in it. And so I'm saying, trust in divine power. It's all here. There's all this stuff he's telling us. Read Job 36 to 38. That's one of my favorite parts of the Bible. That's when Elihu, you know who Job is. Job is one of my favorite people. Daniel and Job. Daniel never got sick because he lived a righteous life, ate right and everything. But Job, remember, Job was a righteous man. And that's when, as a matter of fact, I meant to mention when I talked about charcoal, you know, in 2:8, I think it is. Yeah, in Job 2:8, it says that Satan put boils on him. And what did it say? He went and sat in the ashes. What were the ashes? Charcoal. He was sitting there to heal himself. Powerful stuff. And then, you know, Job was talking about how righteous. Why did you do this to me? You know, he was a righteous guy. And Satan said, of course he's righteous. You made him wealthy. He had all this cattle. He took it all away. God said you could do everything but take away his life. So he did everything. He killed his children, took away all of his cattle. But what did Job say? Job said, though I be slave, I will remain faithful to him. But you know what tests our faith? I love Job because, you know, the reason I got into health is because, first of all, I want to live a long time. Now, I have a little bit different view for that. But I was a true heathen. I hated pain. I still do, but you know, if I got a little sniffle, I wanted to go into my Kung Fu act. I'm the biggest crybaby you ever wanted to know. And when you get sick, that's what really tests your faith. You know, you can talk, I'm a medical missionary, and then you get something, and you run and get that chemotherapy. Why are you doing that? But anyway, Job remained faithful. But after a while, you know, and then remember his friends saying, well, you're a bad person, you're this and you this. Then all of a sudden, remember Elihu? Read chapter 36. And basically what Elihu does, he talks about the majesty of God. But the most powerful chapter is chapter 38. When God comes and says, okay, Job, I listened to you for 35 chapters, whining and complaining. You're a good guy, but let me tell you what the real deal is. Read 36 to 30. Those are the three of the most powerful chapters in the Bible, really appreciating the power of God, His majesty. And you know, God says, well, where were you in the beginning? I mean, that's some of the most beautiful chapters in the Bible. Anyway, I tell you, sometimes my sermons become seminars, sermons. I did a webinar thing called Original Health Secrets. And this is one of those supplement examples that I use that I wanted to share with you, because it has kind of a blend of everything. I like the Shinomi juice, and I blended it with the Echinacea Golden Seal. You can see the formula here. You see the 50,000 units of the D3. Here's the 2 to 5,000 units of the vitamin C, the diet. And this is kind of a simple, you know, I went through a lot of different things, but this is kind of like pulling like 7 or 8 of them together. And you can make up, the point I'm trying to make is, you make up your own. You know what your particular situation is. You know what your particular likes and dislikes are. And you might have a couple of, we're almost to the question and answer section. So let me just finish this. I see your hand up there. Whether you eat or drink, whatever you do, let's make sure we do it for the glory of God. I know some of you have to leave early. I want to take your questions, but as I said, I'm going to answer all your questions. And those of you who sent questions, I've been able to keep up so far, but they're coming in a little bit more fast and furious as we go ahead. So even the new people, you can ask questions about stuff in the past, info at IOM Online. I know the good elder here wants to make a comment. You want to be here tomorrow, though. You definitely want to be here tomorrow. And after the announcements is made, I understand some of you might have to leave. And I want to get your question first, young fellow, right next to this lovely young lady over here that forgot her. But for those of you who have to leave, I just want to say on behalf of me and Elisa, we wish you health, happiness, and God's richest blessings as you pursue your goals to better health. Thank you very much for coming out and sharing this, sharing your time with me.